Hello everybody. Today we're going to see our third lecture entitled Characterization. After we have seen some basic elements of fiction important to literary analysis, we see today one of the most important ones, which is characterization. This is what makes authors different. The way they present their characters to their readers and the way they introduce them may differ from an author to the other, and they use different techniques, of course. What does characterization do for a story? We need to know that. Actually, it allows us to emphasize with the protagonist and secondary characters. You're going to empathize means put yourself at the place of the protagonist and even at the place of the secondary characters. And it also gives us a sense of verisimilitude or the semblance of living reality. We mean by this that you will feel as if you are living the experience of the character in reality. In the best of stories, it's actually characterization that moves the story along. It's the way the characters are presented to you, the way they are described in details to you will make you actually live the situation, live the experience. Because also a compelling character in a difficult situation creates his or her own plot. Characterization helps us understand the plot. Characterization technique is used also to make the character alive through the story. If you want to read more about characterization, you can refer to Karen Bernardo in her book entitled Characterization in Literature, available on website. Types of characters. Well, in literature, in different major novels, we find different characters. We may meet majors or central characters. They are vital to the development and the resolution of the conflict. The major character is central in any story. In other words, the plot, the development, the actions in the story are all revolving around this character, the major or the central, one or ones. We may have more than one. They are central also to the conflict. They are in the heart of the conflict. Minor characters are also important as they serve to complement the major characters and help move the plot events forward. Minor characters don't think by this that they are not important, but they are. They are just important just as major ones, since they help us to see more or better the major ones. They are here to complement them. Sometimes the minor characters play important roles in this action. Another character that we can find in some novels is dynamic. A character can be dynamic as it can be static. Dynamic character is a person who changes over time. We say this character is dynamic if he changes. For example, he starts at the beginning of a novel as a child and then he grows up. So we say that this personality has changed, usually as a result of resolving a central conflict or facing a major crisis. Because facing some difficult crisis, a character may change. He can be kind and he changes into unkind. He can be hostile, then he changes into a criminal by the end. Well, most dynamic characters tend to be central rather than peripheral characters. They are central because resolving the conflict is the major role of central characters. The characters can be also static. A static character is someone opposite to dynamic, as opposite to dynamic, who does not change over time. His or her personality does not transform or evolve. We see him dealing with the same personality or character traits to the end. If he's kind the whole story. If he's unkind in the whole story to the end. We can find a character can be round. And a round character or rounded character is anyone who has a complex personality. He or she is often portrayed as a conflicted and contradictory person. You can find, for example, the story of the Black Cat, Galvan Poe, for example, the character is complex. Since he's suffering of schizophrenia, so he is a round character, as his personality is complex. The traits of his personality are not clear. We can't say that he's kind, and we can't say that he's a criminal. It's not easy to identify him. It requires, actually, analysis. A character can be flat. A flat character is the opposite of a round character. This literary personality is notable for one kind of personality trait or characteristic. It is known for one characteristic and usually does not change. Stock. Stock characters are those types of characters who have become conventional or stereotypical through repeated use in particular types of stories. Some characters, like the mad scientist, are repeated through the different stories to the point that they become stock. So when they are reused again in another story, for example in the modern times, we say that here the character is stock, means that it's new, it's not a new character, but a character we are used to acquaint in older and ancient works. Stock characters are normally one-dimensional, usually flat characters, but sometimes stock personalities are deeply conflicted, and they can be also round characters. Stock characters can be round characters, like the one of Hamlet. Characters also are classified into protagonist and antagonist. A protagonist is the central person in a story. The story's main character. He is the protagonist. He is the one who is faced with the conflict that must be resolved. He may not always be admirable. A protagonist can be hero as it can be a criminal or an anti-hero. Antagonist as opposed to protagonist is the character or characters who may have two antagonists in a story or a situation that represents the opposition against which the protagonist must contend. The protagonist is in a conflict, usually against someone else opposing him, and here he is the antagonist. It is an obstacle that the protagonist must overcome. The anti-hero is a major character. Usually the protagonist is the anti-hero who lacks conventional nobility. Okay, he's not as noble as we usually know the hero. The anti-hero lacks this conventional nobility of mind, and who struggles for values not deemed universally admirable. His values are not admirable. He can be a criminal, he can be a mad scientist, he can be a man with the character of a monster. He can be vulgar, manipulative, and self-centered. But he is still the center of the story. He is still at the center of the conflict in the story. And we are drawn to the challenges he must overcome and the goals he seeks to achieve. Here goes, of course, are not always admirable. A foil. The character can be foil. He is usually the antagonist or an important supporting character. A character which supports the major, whose personal qualities contrast with another character. You may have the proud person, and you may have also on the opposite a foil character representing totally the opposite characteristic of this character. But the aim isn't here of the author is to show, make his protagonist appear in a clear and better situation to his readers. By providing this contrast, we get to know more about the other character. The foil may lead you to know about the protagonist and the major one. Symbolic. Characters can be symbolic. A symbolic character can be major as can be minor character, whose very existence represents some major idea or aspect of society. If you remember, we have read Evelyn, and Evelyn actually represents not only women in the beginning of the 19th century, but also her generation, living under very conflicting and difficult and complex situation, economic, socio-economic in Ireland. So we say this character of Evelyn is symbolic, but she doesn't represent only herself as a single character, not only herself as a woman, but also represented. You know what? She is representative. She represents her whole generation. Like, I give you the example in The Lord of Flies by William Golden. Piggy is a symbol of both personality and physical weakness of modern civilization. The character can be representative of a whole category of people in a certain period of time. Now, how are characters presented? Characters are presented through direct presentation or indirect presentation. In direct presentation, this refers to what the speaker in a poem or a narrator in a novel directly says or thinks about a character. We can know about a character from what he says, or what the narrator in the story tells us about him. In other words, in a direct characterization, the reader is told what the character is like. You are told. The character is described to you through descriptions, through what the narrator says about him. In indirect presentation, where it is a technique of characterization, here the character, you will know the character through what he says or through what he does. And here the reader has to infer, you make inferences. You infer, you try to deduce. You see you analyze what he says, you analyze what he does in the story, and you try to say and infer characteristics of this character to describe him and to analyze him. It's up to you, reader. So here the reader is obliged to figure out what the character is like. It's up to you to analyze what the character says, what he does, what others say about him, etc. Now, how a character is revealed to you as readers in a story, authors refer to different ways. One, they use psychological description. They describe him and his traits of personality to you directly, or by physical description. They describe his physical and how he appears, all about proving what he thinks. Let me tell you what the character thinks. So through that his way of thinking, you can understand him, so you can know him. What he says, huh? Through what he says, when you analyze quotes said by a certain author, character and in a story, this will lead you to analyze his personality, what he does, what others also say about him. It will help you know this character. By his environment, the character, when is presented in symmetry and gloomy environment, is not doesn't appear the same character as presented in a mountain or a natural place. By his reaction to others and to actions against him or for him, he will react. So analyzing his reactions to other people, how he treats the others, how he treats the animals, how he treats himself even, his reaction to himself. Throughout all of these techniques, the character is presented to you. It's this way that authors portray a character. It's just like when a painter uses his colors to present a portrait to you. Practice. I will give you some adjectives and you will try to classify them into the right category. You will find the activity and another one in another worksheet. I will send it to you via email. Okay, thank you. If you have any questions, of course, you can contact me directly about this lecture.